Have you ever wondered how the Russian economy has demonstrated such resiliency in the face of severe international sanctions? This intrigue has puzzled economists, political experts, and policymakers. The question has become increasingly critical as sanctions have escalated over time. The genesis of this curiosity comes from the Ukraine war aftermath, which significantly altered the global political scene and plunged Russia into direct conflict with the West. Post this conflict, Russia found itself targeted by several comprehensive economic sanctions. The world anticipated the Russian economy to buckle under this pressure. Contrarily, the economy proved remarkably resilient, shocking observers worldwide. The sanctions undeniably had a substantial impact, especially on sectors like aviation and car manufacturing, heavily dependent on Western inputs. Their struggles were quite visible and well accounted for. Yet, the overall shrinkage of the Russian economy was less drastic than initially expected, leading many to question the sanctions' efficacy. In 2023, the International Monetary Fund revised its initial prediction of a 2.8% contraction of the Russian GDP to 1.1%, signifying the surprising resilience of the Russian economy. Resilience was due to several crucial factors. Firstly, the Russian government and the central bank swiftly responded to the sanctions. They executed measures like capital flow restrictions, interest rate increase, and significant domestic industry support, which helped stabilize the ruble and reassure investors. Secondly, Russia strategically shifted its economic priorities towards defense spending and promoting domestic industries to lessen Western goods dependence. This shift remarkably insulated the economy from the worst impacts of the sanctions. Thirdly, despite the rhetoric and actions against it, Russia's energy exports, particularly its oil and gas sales to countries like China and India, continued at a substantial level. These sales produced significant revenue and maintained a positive current account surplus, providing much-needed funds in a time of revenue shortfall. Lastly, the sanctions regime's effectiveness was mitigated by factors like enforcement loopholes that enabled some transactions to bypass the sanctions and the hesitance of some firms to entirely cease business with Russia. These factors combined to form a unique blend of resilience and adaptability that kept the Russian economy afloat during this challenging period. Recently, the European Union expanded its sanctions list by adding 27 entities, including companies from China, India, and Iran, accused of being connected to Russia's defense sector or facilitating the purchase of Russian oil and gas. This recent expansion of the sanctions is a pivotal part of the ongoing geopolitical chess game playing out on the international stage. It brings into sharp focus the complex web of economic and political relationships that are under stress due to escalating tensions between the European Union and Russia. At the core of this issue is a struggle for control over crucial resources, specifically the oil and gas industry, which is the economic lifeblood of numerous nations worldwide. The decision of the European Union to expand the sanctions by adding these entities, which represent a diverse selection of companies from various regions including Asia and the Middle East, has made a bold statement. The EU's move has been an eyebrow-raising development, igniting discussions and debates around the globe. The inclusion of these organizations on the sanctions list is a significant step taken by the European Union, which sends a strong message. It communicates to global nations and corporations that any assistance, either direct or indirect, for Russia's defense sector or oil and gas trade, is not going to be overlooked. It also indicates the EU's firm stance against any perceived support for Russia's military sector. The sanctions list, which was already notably extensive, has now expanded further. This enlargement exemplifies the relentless efforts of the European Union to exert and increase pressure on Russia. The underlying objective of this pressure campaign is to curtail Russia's ability to finance its war efforts. Through these sanctions, the EU aims to cut off the financial lifelines that enable Russia to sustain its military campaigns. The sanctions are a strategic instrument of economic warfare, specifically designed to destabilize Russia's economy and undermine its capability to carry out military operations. In parallel with these developments, the situation in the United Kingdom adds another layer to this increasingly complex issue. The UK's Treasury Committee has launched its own probe into the effectiveness of their sanctions regime against Russia. This investigation is a deeply serious initiative, meticulously designed to evaluate the impact of existing sanctions and scrutinize their effectiveness. It is also geared towards identifying any potential loopholes in the sanctions regime. Through a deep dive into the nuances of the current sanctions, The Treasury Committee aims to produce evaluation. Furthermore, the committee will also consider broadening their scope to include buyers of Russian oil and gas. This is a clear indication that the UK is considering a more aggressive stance against Russia. The potential targeting of buyers could dramatically change the landscape of the trade of Russian oil and gas in the global market. The committee has also resolved to explore an additional powerful weapon in the arsenal of economic warfare: the possibility of confiscating frozen Russian assets. These assets are currently frozen under existing sanctions and could be seized in a bid to inflict further damage on Russia's economy. The unexpected resilience of the Russian economy amidst international sanctions unveils a multifaceted landscape. This scenario, which has left many economists, policymakers, and experts puzzled, is notable not just for the sheer resilience, but also for the tenacity and robustness with which the Russian economy is enduring the global economic storm. As we venture deeper into this intriguing mystery, numerous factors begin to emerge. To start with, the Russian economy has demonstrated hints of a certain level of self-reliance, particularly in critical sectors like agriculture. With the sanctions in place, Russia was forced to rely more on its domestic capacities, resulting in an unexpected acceleration in its domestic production capabilities. Surprisingly, the repercussions were an uplift in multiple sectors, leading to a diversification in the economy that goes beyond the traditional energy-focused model. In addition, Russia has been successful in evading the sanctions by leveraging alternative channels and forging new partnerships. Bonds with nations such as China, India, and other key players in the Asian market have been reinforced. Alliances have become Russia's lifeline, enabling it to sustain its economic activities regardless of the limitations imposed by Western nations. However, it's essential to note that this resilience doesn't provide a full picture of the Russian economy. Despite the seeming economic power, there are prevailing issues. Inflation rates have soared, the ruble's value has plummeted, and the standard of living for some Russians has worsened. Still, the economy carries on, albeit marred with an undertone of uncertainty and instability. This extraordinary resilience sparks a deep question about the efficacy of sanctions as a tool in the geopolitical sphere. Sanctions are fundamentally designed to apply pressure, induce behavioral change, or serve as punishment. However, in Russia's case, they seem to have had an unintended, somewhat counterproductive effect. This prompts a reevaluation of the usefulness of these measures, their execution, and their unexpected repercussions. Enhanced diplomatic engagement and negotiation could potentially serve as a more effective approach. Such a strategy would emphasize the significance of dialogue and reciprocal respect in addressing geopolitical disputes.